So why don't we just kind of kick it off with convention stuff? Like, why is a convention a great place to like get into it? Matt,
Yeah,
or Alex, either one.
Well, so my tiny piece of the pie, I would say we have a good number. If CobaltCon is good for anything in Colorado Springs, www.cobaltcon.com. It's good for.
There you go.
We've brought a lot of people in. I mean, there's been a majority of the people that come in are doing that exploratory, like, hey, what is this all about? So we're not anywhere near like the Gamehole Con or Gen Con level, but there has been a lot of, like, I've seen this. It's becoming more popular. I can tell via the YouTubes and the internets that a lot of people are playing this. And this is my first opportunity to go to an event where I can check it out, kind of non-attributional, if you will. You know, because it's, I don't know if it's difficult, but maybe awkward to walk into a game store, and maybe it's less awkward for some of these people to go, I'll just go check it out. I can go see what it's like. I can walk around the tables and see them playing and see why everybody thinks it's fun without committing a whole lot. So we in Colorado, we've seen a lot of that over the last couple of years.
Well, to a couple of the things, Danny, that you mentioned. First of all, entrance to the hobby. This is gonna be a sick name drop here, boys. But 3 years ago or so, I was having a margarita with Chris Perkins on the in the San Antonio Riverwalk, because we're down there for PAX South, and I was down there for True Dungeon. That was the first year we brought True Dungeon to PAX South. Anyway, we're sitting there chatting, and he was at that point still doing Acquisitions Incorporated, which is, you know, I was like, man, Chris, I've known Chris for a while, so man, I just don't get it. And watching other people play D&D, just not my jam. And he goes, hey, me too. I don't understand it either, but it's crazy how popular it is. And he said, we have now solid data at Wizards that shows that more people are entering the hobby by watching people play on YouTube than all the other sources combined, you know, game stores, friends, all that. So that happened. That was 3 years ago.
Yep.
To answer that question as to how people are getting into the hobby, they're watching other people play D&D. So for Gamehole Con, you know, when we set it up, we aped Gen Con as far as the process. So buy a badge, games list, you buy game tickets if you want to. You don't have to. You can go to scheduled games, you can open play, whatever. And the hundreds, if not thousands, of people that we've had to explain how this works to is astounding to me. I thought doesn't everyone know how Gen Con works? I mean, it's not, you know, I just thought everyone went to conventions, but the reality is that most people haven't. And we have a huge number of first year gamers. And the way you can tell is that we keep track of our years of attendance on the badge. They get level credit. So level 1's up to whatever. And you'll see every year, the biggest group of people are level 1 badges, and that's astounding to me, and it keeps growing. And I think it's people who come and tell their friends or whatever, or, you know, see stuff like this or however. But there are lots and lots of people dip their toes in the water in a convention because it's safe, like kind of like the big lecture hall was safe at university, you know.
Yes, anonymity, heard.
Yeah, yep, exactly. And so you can and they can look at the games list, and then we get questions like, what is even the descriptions, we try to, you know, have pretty good descriptions and pretty nuanced ones, but, you know, what level of ability do I really need to play this, despite that it says no ability, no level of experience with this game required. Really, you don't need any. You can really come in there and we'll have to create a character. We'll have to talk with it in a funny voice. I'm like, no, you don't have to do any of those things. You just show up and sit down, and, you know, these people won't believe how much fun you'll have. And
yeah. You know, it's funny too, you bring up that last issue of the mechanics of it, like how to get, like literally how do I get into it? What book do I need? What do I say? Which is probably another discussion. But I think that like there's a tremendous potential at these types of events to create a different type of game material too. Like here's a pack that you get when you come to the game. It's got everything in it you need to play. You're going to fill in a few of the variables, but you're not going to fill all of them in, and then you get to play, and you get to take it away with you when you go.
Well, and keep in mind that the people who are running, and Matt, you can comment on this just as well. The people who are serial runners like you, Danny, at conventions, you're a fucking crazy guy, and so am I. I'm trying to preach. I'm trying to bring the game to the people. I want people to come in my game, and I want to blow their minds. I want to show them a tremendous time, and they walk away and think, "Fuck, that was great. I love this game." That's all. That's all we're trying to do. We're just trying to deliver a great performance and to share the joy that we have for this game with strangers. And so that's what's so great about being able to go to a convention, because you have people who are fundamentally motivated to get you to do more of this. It's not like even a demo that way, because people who are demoing games are paid to be there. Like, all right, you do this next. These are people who are just doing it for nothing. I mean, the most they get is like a free badge and a T-shirt or something. I mean, it's
and your angry booth nerd voice is spot on. That's booth nerd.
Alex is absolutely right, though. I mean, so much of this is him and Matt sharing their passion, their love for the game with everyone else who will show up at the convention. And I don't know what the percentage of people are that are new players at conventions, but we need to do everything we can as a group to welcome them and let them join in all the fun that we're having. Let them show them the game, let them experience it. Because it's super fun. It's super amazing. And the best people that I've met in my life, the best friends that I have, are through gaming.
Without question. Yep, me too. Yeah, so
and I'd say, if
Please,
I may pile on a little bit, I would say this year was probably the most that I have personally oh, you're new to gaming? Let me run you back to a table and find you a GM. I mean, Alex, Brian, and Jimmy, you guys were all there. I'm sure you saw people just coming in and kind of exploring. I'm going to lead people to a table. I've never been to do anything before. I mean, it's an amazing time to be in the hobby. And I would absolutely reiterate that some of my closest friends are gamers.
And if I can comment just briefly on, because our show, the demographics are fascinating. We have more women at my show than I can't even any other convention I've ever been to, and I think now that other shows are catching up, and I don't know why. Maybe it's just Madison, but kids too. But we also try. We have a kids track. We want people that are like my age with my kids that can come and bring their kids, because that's all we want to do too. Like, you want to teach your kids what you care about, and it's to have an opportunity to have a convention experience with a child. I mean, geez, that's like. Just like playing catch in the backyard, whatever. It's that exact same kind of thing, and that's as long as we're cognizant of that we can try to make this accessible to as many people as possible. God, it's tremendous the response. It's been unbelievable.
So only because I find that last comment you made really interesting, and so a subtle twist I just wanted to ask in case how much do you think it is just a groundswell of people learning about it and thinking, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, I want to do macrame. I understand I can do that somewhere nearby. Or how much of it is maybe this whole video game thing that dominates everything? Is there some pushback where people now do want to have some social interaction, like learning about it? They still kind of want to watch it from a distance on YouTube, but eventually they're going to sit at a table with another group of humans. Is that the driver?
Boy, that's a nice sociological question. I think so. I think especially the folks who are getting into the hobby through YouTube, who are watching people like Jimmy and Matt Mercer, who for me are basically indistinguishable. And they say,
right.
That's how we feel.
Hey, Alex, we're going to have to live with that comment for weeks.
I've got it videoed.
Just so Matt doesn't see it, we're cool. Then we're, but that they want to have the same kind of fun. They want to. They look that looks so great, and that's why I think the gateway is to go watch it live. To just walk around a convention hall and say, wow, these are just normal people sitting around playing this game. This is not, there's no barrier to entry here. It's just that simple. And so that is it'd be interesting. And had I known we're going to go down this, we have such computer nerds, such great IT people that are in the game hall, and I can get any kind of data about our attendees. And so one of them, it's a piece that's interesting, is watching the first year attendee and then how the behavior changed year 2 as far as the amount of scheduled games they sign up for. Because it's always like this. They always, sign up for 1 or 2 things, and the next year it's like fucking full schedule. They schedule that thing like the whole. It's crazy how many game tickets they buy.
That is really interesting, and that's kind of why I asked you, because I thought maybe there would be some data on people who respond to a questionnaire with, like, video games are cool. I still play a ton of them, but I sometimes need to unplug that shit, and like be with humans.
So. What's interesting too, though, is I go to conventions for different reasons. I've been playing role-playing games. I've played plenty of D&D, love it to death. I go to conventions to test out other games, other things that I might not be able to play with the current game or the gaming group that I have right now. Call of Cthulhu might not be something that my current gaming group would want to play, but I want to try out.
Right, for sure. Well, I mean, with 5e's dominance, right? I mean, right now, that's your go-to. That without question, I think most of us would probably agree that is the easiest entry point into TTRPGs that was ever devised by man.
And thank goodness for it. I mean, really. Yeah,
I agree. If you want people to come in, you got to turn the porch light on, and you gotta have something that people can connect with very easily. And
D&D 5e.
Yeah, they were having this same discussion last night on Jay's channel, Lord Gusumbus, with Anna. They were having their 50th show, I believe, and this discussion went straight there, and they spent a great deal of time of laying it all out just the same as that we're doing right now, almost identical.
Absolutely true.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting question. I don't know if I asked this in the intro to Alex or not, so we'll start with him. If you could run anything and you could get players to play it, 2 really extremely important caveats. What system would you run?
Well, usually I do a lot of running at conventions. That's pretty much all I do now is I just run games. Because I try to support my brothers and sisters who are running shows. I appreciate how hard it is to get good games on the schedule and to get as many players and seats as possible. So where at first I'd go to a show and run 1 game or something like that. I really try to fill up my schedule and run as much as possible. So because of that, I run a lot of 5e because that's what I write. What I'm published in and what most people know. But if I'm going to run anything for a one-off, it is Call of Cthulhu Invictus. I run Roman era Call of Cthulhu games. I really like that stuff because I'm fascinated by the Roman and Greek pantheon. My child is named Jove, one of them. So I'm kind of into that. And I love it because there's so many little pockets of history that are pretty gray, and it's so fun to fill that stuff in with some Call of Cthulhu answer. So I love it.
I feel like Alyssa Fadden just let a little scream.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say I love the idea. I love the idea of what you said, like filling history's shadowy bits in with your own mythos. In the case of Cthulhu, an actual mythos, but that's great. Let's just run down the list here real quick. Brian, what are you doing, and what would you do given a free reign?
I mean, where?
Like system wise, like what do you like to run?
So currently, I'm running Curse of Strahd for 5th edition for a table of 8.
Oh my god!
It is an exercise.
Glutton for punishment.
Exercise in futility, but I utilize tech and the table, if that makes sense. And so it works out pretty well. And then, if 2 people don't show up, we still game, right?
You're like, ooh, yeah, 2 people.
Right? Yeah, no problem. I got this. However, just for shits and giggles, what am I going to run? Man, the options are open. I could run Shadowrun 5th edition. I could run Legend of the Five Rings. I could run World of Darkness, Battletech. I've got a number of things in my back pocket that are just things that I love, but I rarely get the opportunity to play.
Yep. That goes for everybody, I think. What about you, Matt?
Pathfinder has been my mainstay for Pathfinder First Edition. Important to caveat now. Has been my mainstay for the last many years. As far as a player, I love the ability to. If you have something that you would like to tweak about your character, there is room for it in Pathfinder, and I think that's for the people that love that crunch. I don't know what this was. If you love that crunch.
This is fluff. Crunch.
For people that love that the crunch, Pathfinder is the way to go. If I'm GMing a game, then 5th edition is certainly my go-to right now, especially for conventions. I mean, it's something you pick up for the people that are, as we just talked, describe those new players that are coming in for the first time. It is so simple to just get them into the game and get them to play, for sure.
What about you, Jimmy?
Yeah.
Well, outside the 5e, the channel Praetors Rejects on Twitch, just so y'all know, and here and on Wizards of the Couch, we're running Deadlands 2 or Savage Worlds, and still trying to wrap my head around that. It's been because I don't play it enough or played it enough. It's still learning a bit. But then we're talking for here and on that, we're going to do some DCC also.
Nice.
But I like the Deadlands. I've got to get more comfortable with that rule system, and I'm not there yet. So I'll be honest.
Speaking of running games, Alex, not this year at North Texas, but last year at North Texas RPG Con, converted demon web pits,
Queen of the Dim Web Pits. Yep.
Queen, yeah, thank you.
The original?
Yep.
Of course, the original. Right?
Second edition. Yeah, it's second edition.
Yeah. And so that was not fun. I mean,
It wasn't designed to be. Yeah. No, exactly.
The entertainment factor was high. The mortality rate was also high.
Yeah.
Like we had a 4-hour game, walked through, got into the spider ship. Thought we were doing well until we got to that main room, and then
that's as you guys the Q1, the purple module, they got to basically the cover.
Oh my god.
That's where they got to. So what I did is I just took the instead of the demon web pits, I just took the spider ship, and I said, all right, you've been recruited, you're in a demi-plane of chaos, the sands are purple, go. There's a ship that's sitting there, what do you do? And we started with that. And just like a Cthulhu game, the ending is always the same.
I was just going to say,
it's just a question of where in the ship,
Yeah, that last paragraph, I love every part of what you said. I'm like, and then what can we do? For me, it's I run 3.5 right now, but I generally run 5e. I'm running 3.5 because I'm running a Monty Cook game of Arcania Evolved just for some friends who are really into that world. And if I had to say my favorite game system to run, if it's not Call of Cthulhu, which I can tell horror stories in any game, it would be Legend of the Five Rings. And I tell horror stories in that one too, because there's plenty of horror in that world. So I just love the system. I love the task resolution system. It's really elegant, and I love the complete reliance on story. Like you cannot escape it. You must tell the stories of these houses, these families, and these famous samurai. And without that, it loses its cohesiveness. So it's exactly the kind of thing I like to double down on. So just real quick, in order, I just want to ask everybody really quick, just a real quick yes or no question. Run it with the author's intent. You leave the module pretty much the way it is. You try to understand what they were going for and run it the correct way, let's say, or modify it. Do what you got to do. Pick and choose.
Does this include box text?
Brian, you're first.
Damn it. I hack every module. I do go with the author's intent, but I give it my own flavor. Does that
Yep. Makes sense?
Okay.
Jimmy.
I'm pretty much point on with what's in the book right now. It's all online. So, yeah. Author's
Okay.
intent for me. Yep.
What about you, Matt?
So I have a bit of a longer answer than what these two Yahoos.
Go ahead.
So back in yeah, hey you
Yahoo
90s
got mail.
dungeon. I wanted to make the sound effect, but I can't remember what it was. So back in the 90s, Dungeon Magazine had a module or an adventure in there called Sleepless, as an example, and that was one of my my favorites. And so I would go soup to nuts as written on that one, and run it over and over again. And that was that was one of the ones that I would just for sure just make sure I covered down as written. Yeah.
My short answer is I typically pull 3 or 4 modules off the shelf or fiction sources or whatever, and I just mash it up. I'm definitely a remix culture person, so I find something in a DCC book, I find something in a Call of Cthulhu book. I'll take a 3.5 module and then something I read about in like Tome of Beasts, and that becomes, I just jam it all together. I copy all the I need, highlight everything in yellow, and just run from that. I just have notes basically.
Well, I spoke with Alex. I'll get the Fantasy Grounds module of Sea Kings, and we'll run it here on the channel, and that will be one of the games we'll put up, and then he can come in and watch it and critique. And
Can't wait. I'm in.
We'll just have Alex's head floating in the corner. Like, who's the guy from the little guy in the Flintstones who just showed up every once in a while?
He has to be nodding disapproval.
Alex is nodding his head. He's thinking, no fucking way is that happening.
That sounds great.
Oh man.
So I guess the last part, we'll be here just for a few more minutes here, but I guess I just wanted to touch on something we probably should bring up in another episode, but maybe we can kind of start the ball rolling here, get some ideas. When people join this hobby, how many of them are, just bluntly, how many of them are joining as players? How many of them are joining as game masters? Because my feeling is, I've watched a lot of YouTube. I love watching YouTube stuff on this, and I also frequent a lot of Facebook groups about it. And there are tons of people who are like, I knew I was going to be a GM. I always was a GM. I rarely play. I don't really miss it. Sometimes if I get to play with somebody who I really like, that's great. But generally, I like to be on this side of the screen. And other people are like, whoa, way too daunting. I would never do that. I'm just happy to come and play. So what's the difference there? Like, when someone enters this hobby as a GM or enters as a player, like, how is that different between those two groups?
Well, I don't know how you can enter the hobby and say I'm a GM. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't know how you could be any good. I think there's probably I do watch the 5e forums, and there is a little of that. And that's when we have these stupid posts like, "Oh, my DM did this, and do you think this is unfair?" Kind of stuff. And it's all seems to be such growing pain stuff. That we've always in the game hole, we always rotated DMs. So we just
cool.
take turns. There's no one been the DM. We just.
Are you watching my gaming group? Are you watching?
So that's why I don't know though, that distinction, that hard line has never been one that is.
Can you clarify what you mean by sharing the role of GM? Do you mean from game to game or from campaign to campaign?
Campaign to campaign,
Right.
rule system to rule system. We flipped from some Savage Worlds to D&D, to different editions of D&D, to Call of Cthulhu. We've splashed on that, even Classic Traveler. So what everyone wants to run, you can put it's your turn, run it, and we'll play it. So I think it's tremendously valuable. And as much as I like to DM, and people, apparently like my games, to be a player still, because I love playing in other people's games, because I always learn something. It's like, God, that was really cool how that
Agreed.
how that gal did that thing. That was a really nice turn of phrase, and how she set that up.
Yeah. So what does anybody else have to say about that? Like, I guess the only thing I would put out there just as a counter argument maybe is the first guy I ever played with, he was nothing but a GM. Now he was an older guy, and he read the books, and maybe, I'm probably looking at the past through rose-colored glasses. He might not been that great a GM. He was just my first GM, right? But part of me thinks like he was pretty good at it, right? And he never wanted to play. I think it was a little bit of power tripping. You know, like we all came over and hung out at his house. You know, it was cool.
Jimmy Duffy, your first GM?
Oh, wow. Why don't we have a sound effect for this?
He just goes dark. Stop video.
I guess I can see people being like storytellers and wanting to get into it, but you really can't do it without playing first, right?
I don't think so.
No, you cannot. You can't.
So chicken and egg.
I think, I mean,
the first game. Who runs the first game? Then?
Just like Alex mentioned, I mean, I think that is that's the base for a lot of the questions that go on Facebook on that huge 130,000 person group. Like, hey, my GM just did this. Is this fair? Well, I mean, that's probably because the guy just went and bought the books and was like, oh, yep. I'm a GM.
But you know what? You have to start somewhere.
You do have to start somewhere.
Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, and I would buy. There's no. I was not implying by any stretch that I walked in and said, "Hey, I'm a good GM now because I got the red box before you guys." I mean, but it does take practice. There has to be some sort of experience in there. Yeah, it is a big question, but
yeah, when you're first learning, everybody's a little more forgiving.
You got to play first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just remember when we first started, playing with Roger, and but then even in our group, I was the first one who was willing to GM, and I really never stopped GMing after that. I played a lot more back then, but I never really stopped GMing because I was just the one who was willing to take all the shit.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. Yeah,
a lot of work. That's why we rotate. I think I'm so glad that we do what we do because I just ran my guys through Seeking's Malice and I was like, I can't wait to play again. I'm ready to have a little time on the other side of the screen. It'll be good.
Yeah.
So.
You ran it through the whole book?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
You look though, like I feel like the trend of gaming philosophy, game design philosophy, is a simpler game that is easier for the GM to run so he can tell a better story so the players have more fun.
I think that's probably true, yes. And a mathematical percentage of hitting that is favorable to human psychology.
Mm-hmm.
You pretty much hit 50 to 60% of the time in D&D plus, so in 5e. So, I think they're pretty smart to know that you've designed the game so that people fail forward rather than coming to direct to stopping.
Yep.